Hi, I'm Corinne, and this is Free Press Fail. It's almost 2021, so it's time for 2020 wrap up. This year has been full of fake news, so much that it's really hard to choose a favorite. But I've settled on two stories in particular that really take the cake for top fake news this year. One, COVID-19, and two, the election, just the whole thing. At FPF, we like to focus on a few pillar issues: liberal bias in media, big tech censorship, Trump derangement syndrome, and what we call righteousness porn, which is really just social justice warrior virtue signaling type stuff. These two stories, the election and COVID, touch on every one of those things, and I'll break it down. Starting with COVID-19, the whole thing seemed really suspicious from the start. China cover-ups, complicit politicians, and the scariest charts that anyone has ever seen, backed up by data that made no sense to anyone who looked at it for more than 5 minutes. The coronavirus scandemic was top-notch Free Press Fail on every level. On big tech censorship, now, if you didn't already think tech giants had too much power, they probably changed your mind this year. First off, you could not, and still cannot, get online without a million warnings from every social media platform. Hosting a party? Shame on you. Facebook wants you to know that groups should not be gathering. Working out and need a good playlist? Spotify wants you to know that you should wear a mask and go outside when you can. Instagram still promotes stay-home stories 9 months after the 14 days to slow the spread. And if you're a doctor who isn't Anthony Fauci, you can basically expect fact checks or blatant bans on Twitter. Earlier this year, when a group of literal practicing doctors, which Fauci is not, teamed up to promote treatment options not yet endorsed by the FDA or CDC, YouTube wiped the videos from their platform. Twitter banned the doctors. Facebook labeled the news as misinformation. Tech elites went hard against facts and went all in for Fauci. Anything to hurt Trump. Which brings us to the derangement syndrome. This year, even mainstream liberals started blaming Trump for COVID deaths as if he were personally in charge of the biological weapon released, intentionally or not, by China. They went after everything Trump said and did related to COVID, everything, and they took the opposite stance whenever possible. Trump wants to shut down travel? They want you to go to Chinatown parades. Trump wants to open up? They want to shut down. Trump wants $2,000 checks for Americans, and they want you to get wrecked. Some liberal governors went as far as banning hydrochloroquine simply because Trump suggested that it was a valid treatment for COVID. So I'm sorry, who's killing people again? It was truly deranged thinking, and it fueled the fake news, which, wow, there was a lot of it. For almost a year now, the media has been straight up lying about the number of deaths. Cable news has had a love affair with Andrew Cuomo, and they're hyper-focused on Republican mask wearing or lack thereof, and they have a totally delusional obsession with the numbers in Florida and Texas, while they refuse to look into the numbers in California and New York, which are obviously higher. They become a full-blown COVID propaganda mob, forcefully distributing fear porn like it's going out of style. They report every COVID-related death as a COVID death. They stress case numbers over hospitalization rates, which would be a real thing. And just like big tech, they basically peddle Fauci's latest lies whenever possible. Save masks for doctors is the headline one week. You're killing grandma if you don't wear a mask is the headline the next week. Of course, they completely ignored who was actually killing grandma, which was Andrew Cuomo, who sent hundreds of COVID-positive patients to nursing homes, and there was barely any reporting on that. Instead, they stuck with headlines like, Trump says to inject bleach. He didn't. And they promised that a COVID vaccine would never be released before the end of the year. Surprise, it was. Righteousness porn was also rampant with COVID, and to be honest, the virtue signaling has gone so far, I feel very aware of which of my Facebook friends would have been informants for the Nazis. This year, people literally felt compelled to call the cops on their neighbors for violating arbitrary and probably illegal executive orders made by power-hungry politicians who were definitely getting fresh haircuts and new Botox while we were all shut down. The weirdest part? I'm not even convinced any of these little snitches are actually afraid of COVID. A good friend of mine, who is like king of posting the wear your mask lectures, met up with me this summer, and he gets out of the car without a mask. We're outside, and I didn't care. But he tells me like, oh my gosh, sorry, I forgot the mask. Is that fine with you? And I'm like, obviously, but I'm surprised it's fine with you, judging by your post. And he says, oh, I'm not actually huge on that. I just feel like it's something I have to say, out of social obligation. I don't know at all. But since then, I've come to think a bunch of these idiots are feeling the same way when they post their stay-at-home propaganda and other COVID nonsense. It's a lot of ridiculousness for no good other than the fact that it is helping me clear out my feed of really, really insufferable people. That barely even scrapes the surface of the COVID scam because there was really so much, but we're taking on 2 stories today, so I'll move on. It's another big one, the election. Just everything about it, the whole thing. This whole campaign year demanded Free Press Fail insight. Let's go into the fake news. But wow, where do I even start? Besides burying every racist video, rape accusation, and gaffe for Biden, the fake news actively worked to promote the liberal agenda and Democrat candidates even more than usual this year. They covered the peaceful protests that involved burning down cities. We can all remember CNN standing in front of a car, literally on fire, while the Cryon claimed the demonstration was mostly peaceful, like how I'm going to be mostly sober tonight when I ring in the new year. The media also joined in on chants to defund the police, promoted stories of police brutality that were full of half-truths or complete inaccuracies, and turned a blind eye to their beloved social distancing rules when thousands took to the streets in anger. It was all so frustrating, but the biggest thing for me is that in addition to all of that, they ran a bunch of fake polls that helped the Dems rake in millions of dollars based on the idea that several Senate races were actually in their grasp. They weren't. Lindsey Graham was said to be in the closest race in the entire country. He won by double digits. Similar stories for Tillis in North Carolina and Collins in Maine. Why did the news think that these races were within the margin of error? Well, they probably didn't, but it's much easier to exploit liberal donors if they think their guy might have an actual shot at winning. Of course, fake news wasn't on their own in this. They also had the support of big tech. And as you might have noticed, they were dialed up this election cycle. Besides the incessant "this statement is disputed" warnings on literally every Trump tweet, the most obvious election interference from the tech elite was much less subtle, when they attempted to scrub the Hunter Biden laptop scandal from the internet. When the New York Post first ran that story, Twitter and Facebook banned the link. Twitter even suspended the New York Post account. They pretended they had policies on publishing private data or something like that, even though they had happily published leaked tax returns for Trump just like weeks before. It was full-blown censorship to protect their candidate of choice, Joe Biden. And it seems that's a theme that they're sticking to. YouTube released a concerning statement earlier this month that they would be banning any videos that suggested Biden was not a legitimate president. Can they just declare themselves a state-run media agency already? Deep state-run media? Though the platform literally ran with anything that discredited Trump, they now feel a great responsibility to protect democracy and promote truth, which we know means banning conservatives and going with whatever Biden's comms team puts out. And it goes beyond what you're posting on their platform. They also want you to accept their talking points on your platform, or they'll demonetize you. We saw Google, they own YouTube, try to ban the Federalist and Zero Hedge from their ad platform earlier this year, and actually they're trying to do it to Free Press Fail right now. Guess that's what happens when you make too much noise. I won't be apologizing anytime soon. These tyrants have been absolutely out of control, but hey, the woke sheeple loved them this year. Social media was the hot spot for righteousness porn. Maybe in this case, we can call it self-righteousness porn. From demanding universal mail-in voting in the name of protecting those vulnerable to COVID, to suggesting that conceding a fraudulent election is the moral thing to do, libs are hard at work at being such good people about the election. Like, they're so nice right now that they're knocking over old ladies to get a COVID vaccine that they said Trump would never be able to get done this year. But anyway, so nice. They're also fake virtuing signaling on a bunch of first for Biden that actually aren't first. In case you didn't know, the first woman to run a successful presidential campaign was not Team Biden. It was Kellyanne Conway in 2016. The first openly gay cabinet member will not be Mayor Pete. It was Trump appointee Richard Grenell. And Biden will not be the first to have an all-female senior comms team. That is also something Trump already did, and with much better women. Thank you very much. Of course, this statement will probably be fact-checked because big tech cannot allow for free expression in the era of whatever mob rule they think we're in now. This whole video will probably be shadow banned. That's just how it works in 2020. And the craziest thing is, none of this is going to stop in 2021. It's probably going to get worse. So I'll see you on Free Press Fail with lots of updates in the new year. Cheers.